Hi, this is Tara from Stranded by the Sea, and I'm going to be giving you a little background information about our sea spinner shawl, as well as doing the cast on and setup rows for the sea spinner shawl. It's our knitting pattern for this year's slow yarn crawl. You normally will use fingering weight yarn for knitting this shawl. However, for demonstration purposes, I'll be using some worsted weight yarn, and that's just so the stitches are a little bit bigger and it's easier for you to see the stitches and the technique that we're doing. The other tool that you will need to make this shawl is a drop spindle. And that's a little bit unusual for most knitters. If you are a spinner, you might already have a drop spindle. This is a drop spindle from Cascade Spindle Company, and it is a finely crafted, handmade drop spindle made from a very nice spalted and fiddlehead maple for the whorl. That's this wide part up here at the top that gives the spindle some weight to be able to twist and turn for longer. And then the shaft here of the drop spindle, and this one is made from walnut. The Cascade Spindle Company uses interesting shapes for their drop spindles. They are all named after different mountains here in our Cascade Mountain Range. This one is the St. Helens. It has a little crater at the top of it so that it resembles Mount St. Helens. You'll also find different spindles from this company that resemble different mountains, such as Mount Rainier, Pilchuck, Tiger Mountain. They are all shaped differently and have different sizes and weights, so they're very fun and pretty spindles. They're also very well made so that they're going to spin for a very long time and give you nice, consistent, even results, and be easy and friendly for you to use if you're interested in spinning. If you are not a spinner yet, this shawl is a great way to get an introduction into how to use a drop spindle to at least put some twist into yarn, and how a drop spindle can be used to twist and to put a spiral into the yarn. We do recommend using a drop spindle for making the fringe for this shawl. If you just use your fingers to pull on the yarn and to twist like this with your fingers, you are going to get some repetitive stress going with that, and we don't want anybody to get any injury. So this is going to be quite a bit of work. When you put the loop on the drop spindle, it helps to twist and make it a lot easier to turn. Now, if you don't have a drop spindle already, or you don't want to invest in something like this that is finely crafted and made to last a lifetime and give you a lot of joy in spinning, there are some more introductory level spindles that you can use, and this is a very basic introductory level drop spindle. It is well made. The whorl at the top here is balanced, and the shaft here of the drop spindle is also straight and isn't warped at all. So you'll get a really nice spin from this. This is a very good drop spindle if you're beginning to learn to spin. This is only about $25. If you don't want to invest in a drop spindle and you just want something that's basic to complete this shawl, something like this will also work. This is made from pieces from the hobby store. It's just a length of dowel that has been cut with a little hook screwed into the end of it, and then a wagon wheel or kid's toy wheel put onto it to give it a little bit of weight. You do need some weight to be able to get it to spin around comfortably. So something like this will only be a couple of dollars for you to put together, but I really recommend at a minimum to have something like this so it's easier on your hands and your body to be able to twist the fringe that we'll be doing for this shawl. If you are interested in spinning and you haven't done it before, hopefully this will be a good opportunity for you to get something, maybe a basic drop spindle or something a little bit nicer if you'd like to spoil yourself a little bit and to have a little bit of fun with it. So let's get to the shawl. So to do the cast on for this shawl, the first step is to cast on 3 stitches. We just need a tiny bit of a tail. I'm going to do a simple long tail cast on. There's 2 stitches and 3. That's all we need to begin our shawl. Then there are a few setup rows. So the first setup row is to do an increase in our first stitch. We are going to knit into the front and to the back of the stitch. So we're going to knit into the front If you don't know how to KFB or knit front and back, after you knit the first stitch, you leave the stitch on the needle, rotate your needles around, and then come in through the side and go through the back loop of the first stitch, and then knit through the back loop. And then that comes off of the needle. So we have increased by 1 stitch, and we have knit into the front and into the back of the first stitch. And I don't know if you can see, but it looks a little bit like a knit stitch on the first one, and then the second stitch always has that little purl bump on it when you KFB. All right, so that's the first step. Then the next step is to spin fringe for the edge of our shawl. And we want to have one little fringy that comes off the point. So we are going to spin fringe when we get to the last 2 stitches in the needle. And to do that, we knit again front and back, knit into the front, and then into the back of the stitch. That comes off of the needle. We have 1 stitch remaining on our left-hand needle. We're going to leave that there. And then to make the loop for the fringe, we are going to pull the last loop that we just knit off of the working needle. We're going to make a large loop, about 8 to 10 inches. We're going to pick up our drop spindle and put that loop onto our drop spindle. Now, one tip I recommend is that you can use the drop spindle at this point as a measuring device. And this drop spindle is about 8 to 10 inches long, so I'm going to use the length of the whole drop spindle to measure. If you were using something like that dowel that I showed you from the hobby store before, that one is a little bit longer. And if we put that one on the loop, you can see that it goes a little bit longer. Now you can choose how long you want to make your fringe, but to ensure that your fringe is always the same length, if you wanted to make it 8 or 10 inches long, you could use a little magic marker and make a tick mark there so that you always know that you're coming to the same point on the drop spindle. And then that way your fringe is always going to be the same length. So I would recommend, if you've got something like this, that you mark the place where you want your fringe to be for the length of your fringe. Or if you're using something that is the correct length, this one also has a few little decorative marks on it. So right there, there's a few little ridges. If you want to make your fringe a little bit smaller, you could use those as a guidepost. So pick whatever your mark is going to be and have that be your measuring stick so that you know that your fringe is always going to be the same length. So once we have our loop measured out, then we are going to twist the fringe. And I'm going to go in a counterclockwise direction, and we are going to spin that loop until we start seeing it kink back up on itself. So I'm holding some little tension there. I'm squeezing my needles tight there so I'm not pulling through any extra yarn, and then we are twisting, and we're going to spin it until the yarn kinks back up on itself and we have quite a bit of twist placed up into that strand. The more twist that you have, the more solid your fringe is going to be. If you don't have enough twist in the fringe, then your fringe is going to hang limply and loosely, and it's not going to wrap around itself tightly or very nicely. So after you have your fringe twisted, you're going to pinch the top of the yarn of the loop that you've just twisted to take it off of the drop spindle. We don't want to lose any of the twist that we have put in it, so be sure to grasp it firmly and hold it tightly. And then we are going to place that loop back onto our right hand needle. So there we've placed the loop back onto our right hand needle, and there is our last loop that is still in place. Now at this point, don't tug on your working yarn. If you tug on your working yarn, you're going to disfigure your fringe and you're going to pull some of that loop that you have created back out, and we want that to remain the same size. So just gently hold your working yarn, and then we are going to knit two together through the back loop. So insert your working needle in through both stitches together through the back loop and knit those two stitches together. There we go, and then that comes off the needle. Now you can see I've got a little bit of a kink in my fringe. The next step of creating the fringe is to untwist it and even it out and smooth it out so it all forms up really nicely. We're going to make sure that the twist is evenly distributed, find the center point of the fringe, and then give it a little twist, and there it will hang nicely and smoothly, and we have this lovely, beautiful little tendril that we've created that is a nice little spiral. Okay, that is set up row 1. Then we are going to turn the work, and we are going to do a wrong side row. We have our working yarn in front, and we are going to slip the first stitch with the working yarn in front, and then we are going to knit to the end of the row until there is 1 stitch remaining on the needle. Then with the last stitch on the needle, we are going to purl 1. And that is going to be all of our even rows, and our wrong side rows are all going to be the same. Then we move on to row 3. This is our next right side row. Now we are going to start the twisted right edge of our fringe, and our edge stitch for this is going to be a right twisted stitch, which works the first 2 stitches on the needle. So to make a right twisted stitch, you are going to insert your working needle into the second stitch on the needle knitwise. We're going to knit the second stitch on the needle, and we're going to leave both of those stitches in place, and then we are going to insert our working needle into the first stitch on the needle and to knit that stitch. And then we take both of those stitches off of the needle, and that is our right twisted stitch, and that will be our first 2 stitches on the right side from now on. Then for row 3, we do a yarn over and knit 2. Okay, we are going to do row 4. Row 4 is a wrong side row. All of those are the same. Slip 1 with the yarn in front, knit to the end, and then purl the last stitch. Row 5, this is still our setup row 5. First stitch is a right twisted stitch. Again, insert your needle into the second stitch on the needle and knit, and the first stitch on the needle and knit. Then we yarn over, knit 1, yarn over. We have 2 stitches remaining on the needle, and we are going to spin fringe. So we are going to knit in the front and the back, the second to last stitch, leaving 1 stitch remaining on our left hand needle. Then we are going to pull the last loop that we knit off of the working needle, make a large loop, pick up our drop spindle, put the loop on the drop spindle, measure. You can see that one I did is a little bit too long, so I'm going to just snug up the slack. There we go, it's the right length. We are going to spin in a counterclockwise direction. You can pick whichever way you want to go, clockwise or counterclockwise. Just always go in the same direction. All right, we're going to remove the loop from the drop spindle. Place the loop that we've just spun onto our left-hand needle. And then knit those 2 stitches together, gently picking up our working yarn, not tugging on it too tightly. Knit those 2 stitches together through the back loop. And you can see we've got a little kinky mess here again. We need to smooth that out. So open that back up, make sure that the twist is evenly distributed, find the center point, give it a little bit of pinch, and that will go back together all on its own. There it lays nice and even. You want to sort of zhuzh those and straighten them out and smooth them out as you go along. It will make it easier to see the work, and it will also make it smoother to finish and block later. All right, we are on a wrong side row. So yarn in front, slip the first stitch, knit to the end, and purl 1. Now we are on row 7. Setup row 7 is a right twisted stitch, a yarn over, a knit front and back, and then with 4 stitches remaining, we're going to knit 2 together, yarn over, and knit 2. Row 8 is a wrong side row. Our last setup row 9, right twisted stitch, yarn over, knit to the last 4 stitches, knit 2 together, yarn over, and now with 2 stitches remaining we are going to spin fringe. So knit front and back, pull our loop, pick up our drop spindle, measure our loop. Oh, I did that one way too long. It's not a problem. Snug up your slack. Measure and twist. Pinch the loop. Place your loop back on your left-hand needle. Gently pick up your working yarn and knit 2 together through the back loop, and then finally smooth out your fringe. Even out the twist, pinch, and release. There you go, and you can see we have one bit of, there's my tail of my yarn. We have 1 bit of fringe down at the corner and 2 that are laying smoothly off across to the side, and we have the beginning of our twisted edge and our eyelet edge also beginning there. So that completes the setup. We have 1 more wrong side row to work. Slip the yarn with the slip the stitch with the yarn in front and knit across. Purl the last stitch. Now we are ready for the main body.